Good afternoon, Kodiak.
Hello, hello. Thanks for the invitation.
Sure, my pleasure. I'm always very interested to get to know the community of GeoGuessr a bit better, in particular, the best players, in particular, the pro players. And in your case, you're also one of the world champions. So we'll talk about this in a few moments. But before anything else, share with us what you're willing to share in terms of who you are. Maybe three keywords or three numbers or anything really that you'd like to share to tell us a bit more about who you are.
Um, so, yeah, I feel like I fit a German stereotype quite well. Like, I am kind of. I like when something is in order, is structured. If you have rules, stuff like that. I am pretty competitive as well. So I'm not the biggest fan of losing. And I just like learning new stuff. And if I have like a passion, I'm very passionate about it. Yeah, I feel like that describes me quite well.
So you use the username Kodiak. I'm not going to ask your real name unless you want to share it. And I'm curious to where the nickname comes from. Where's the username coming from, Kodiak? And I have to tell you the truth. The first time I saw it, it reminded me of Kodak, the photo company, and Zodiac, the serial killer. I think in the 70s or the 80s in the US. So I was like a mashup in my head. So where is it
it
coming from, Kodiak?
it's not a combination of those two, but that would be funny. No, it actually has kind of something to do also with like geography. So as I've as you might notice, I'm a huge geography nerd, and I was just like looking at maps, and then I was like, this island in front of Alaska looks cool, and then I was like, this name of the island sounds even cooler, and then I just took that. So the Kodiak Island in front of Alaska's coast, that's where my name originates from. Just looking at maps, and I was like, this is a cool online nickname.
It is a very cool one. And indeed, when I searched on my favorite search engine, Google, I did find Kodiak being this island. Otherwise, I had no idea. And I felt a bit stupid when I realized it was somewhere in the world.
It also has a combination. Actually, there's a bear living on this island, the Kodiak bear, the biggest non-polar, I think the biggest bear outside the polar bear. And yeah, like because of that, I kind of started to like bears as well, just because the name I found online from this island, and then I was like, okay, let's read into those bears, and then I was like, oh, those bears are actually kind of cool. So that's how I kind of got some interest in bears as well, which is kind of funny.
Very interesting. You told me recently you were passing an exam. Do you want to talk more about what you're doing when you're not playing GeoGuessr?
Yeah, I'm studying economics in my third year. Like it's not just plain economics; it has some focus on like country analysis and especially emerging market countries. So that's also kind of where my interest is, like in other cultures and stuff like that is from. So I try to combine this in my studies. So do something that I like, where I can do something later with, like economics, but then still have my passion to look at other countries and cultures. So that's like a cool mix up. And yeah, I really like my studies. So now I'm in my third year, and yeah, the exam went pretty well actually. I passed with 97 out of 100 points.
Are you satisfied with 97 for you, a competitive person? Why are the 3 points missing?
Nah, I was pretty happy because I didn't study as much as I should have, and the result was fairly surprising to me in the end. So I'm very happy with it actually.
That's fair. Well done. Um, which emerging countries? Are there specific areas or is it in general emerging countries that you're looking at?
Yeah, so emerging markets in generally is with my studies, but like my prime area is like Southeast Asia and I guess East Asia. That's where I'm very fascinated about. So my favorite country, like I cannot pick it with one country, but like the area in Southeast Asia, Indonesia is super cool. I really like Thailand, Vietnam, even Myanmar, even though we have some struggles there right now, Malaysia, Cambodia, everything, Philippines in Southeast Asia is super cool. Um, and yeah, so I focus in my studies on Southeast Asia, but there are also other countries like in Southeastern Europe or Latin America or stuff. But yeah, I mostly am interested in the Southeast Asian stuff.
Do you have a sense of what you'd like to do after your studies in terms of a job that would allow you to marry your skills and your interest in those
There's
geographies?
so many different possibilities. So I still try to find my best field inside the subject like of economics. I feel like there's so many possibilities, and for now, I am very interested in like logistics. I think like it's super interesting to see how the world connects throughout logistics, like that, like you pick a grape in South Africa and how it ends up in a wine in I don't know, in like South Italy in a supermarket or something. So that's like super interesting to me how like the process of everything works. But yeah, I could just also work for companies as like someone that needs to go to, I don't know, Bangkok today, and in 3 days I need to be in Austin or something. I feel like that would be also pretty interesting. Ooh, God, my camera just fell down. I will put it back up.
Let's go back to GeoGuessr, because obviously a lot of people watching this are going to be interested about GeoGuessr and how you play GeoGuessr. But I always like to also present a different facet of the pro players. What prompted you to play GeoGuessr in the first place?
How did I get going? So actually, I knew about that game for a long time. So since like 2016, 17. I first tried it out in 2017, like looking back at my creation count of the account told me that. I think maybe I've tried it before as well with like other accounts, but that's my current account from 2017. And I played it like just on and off, like during class or something, just here and there, like a game. I did some 25k runs with my friend together, just like we sitting in a LAN together and just trying to 25k something. It took us like 1 hour to get one round or something, but it was so much fun. And then I kind of lost touch to it. I mean, I wasn't really home for a year, so I didn't really have anything to do with computers or games at all. But even after that, I just didn't play it anymore because like I forgot about it more or less. And then like in 2020, I wanted to start again. I don't know, it just came to me. I think it was because of COVID that I just had time and what could I do? What do I enjoy? I enjoy geography, and I always knew about GeoGuessr, so it was just like, okay, I want to start again, but I always want to start with my friends again. And they always said, nah, I'm not interested in stuff. And that went on for like 8-9 months or something, and then I was just like, okay, I need to try it myself on my own. And that was like in January or February 2021. And then I tried for one day the free trial version, and then I just bought 1 year premium the day after because I was so hooked. And yeah, as you can see, I'm still here, so it was a good decision. Yeah.
You're still here and you've become one of the best players in the world. We'll talk about the championship in Paris at the end of October in a moment. But before we get to that point, can you give us a sense of how much you practice nowadays to keep that level?
Okay, so nowadays actually not that much anymore. I had my phase like from when I started, or let's say from April 21 to like end of 2021. I practiced a lot and I played a lot, like not almost, more than 2 digits hours of per day. So at least 10 hours per day for like almost a year straight or something. It was kind of hard to combine that with studying, but I mean, it kind of worked. But yeah, like nowadays, I don't really play that much anymore. I just discover, experience, and I try to share a lot. So I kind of try to help others. I don't know, I just go on Twitch and chat there and try to help some, or just hang with friends that I met via GeoGuessr and play with them stuff. But I don't really actively practice that much, except for like some specific things like Indonesia I'm very interested in, so I practice that. I just practice, I guess, while playing with my friends because they are correct at Japan or whatnot, Ecuador. So there are just some things that I pick up, but I don't like sit down and play games to just practice anymore, because I feel like I reached the level where I'm like, I need to play a bit to keep it, but I just improve in the things where I'm very interested in, and the rest is like already on a decent level where I feel like I don't really want to put that much time and effort into it anymore. But rather pass it on to others what I already learned.
The areas you're interested in, are these the areas you feel are still challenging and difficult, like Indonesia and trying to region guess within Indonesia? Or are there other things you'd like to look into?
I feel like there are many challenging things where I just don't want to improve in. So for example, I feel like it's very hard for me to region guess Russia, but I just don't have any interest in learning it, because it's just I'm not interested in this country. Like the way you would need to learn it is not the way I want to play GeoGuessr. You would need to learn camera generations, like which car drove, does this road have antenna, is this was this taken in winter, and not really how I like to play GeoGuessr, to learn about the culture, the people, the language, the landscape, and stuff like that. So that's a different approach. I feel like people can do that, and like it's fine if they do it, but it's not really how I like to play the game. So I prefer learning countries where you can guess by real life clues, such as I said, people, cultures, language, and whatnot, and landscape. So that's why I enjoy Indonesia so much, because it's so diverse, yet so few people know stuff about it. That's why I really like to dive deep into the meta research for Indonesia, and also just Southeast Asia in general and East Asia fascinates me. So that's where I'm more prone to learn stuff rather than countries I have no connection to. So that's why I also like to hear a lot about Japan, because Japan is just interesting to me. So yeah.
It's very refreshing to hear your perspective, and it echoes a little bit what other players were telling me as well, where even though you may enjoy and you do enjoy the competitive nature, you also want to have fun playing and not always be obsessed with competition, but also just do what you want. And it's very refreshing coming from you, since you're one of the very best players, whereby you're saying, you know what, I'm not interested in Russia and there's no harm with it. You're more interested in other areas. And then this is a good way, I believe, to ensure that you keep having fun while playing and not feeling this is a drag. You have to do it.
Yeah. Even though I'm competitive, I still set my boundaries to where I have fun. So I feel like recently the game has become so competitive, as you mentioned. And even though I think that's cool and that brings spotlight on the game, it's not really... I don't enjoy it that much, because people try hard stuff. I feel like they don't really actively enjoy. It's just to get better. And I'm more the type of guy that learns the stuff I'm interested in, as I said. So I could see myself learning Brazil at some point, because it has different landscapes and stuff. Or US or something, because it's kind of diverse from east to west. But stuff that you just learn to get more points, I don't know. This is just not what I enjoy as much as others do. So yeah, it's a different approach, I guess. But I play the game a bit differently than others. So always, the people that you interviewed so far, I feel like they are all no-move players, except maybe GC a bit. But or I guess Jake Lyons as well is playing some moving. But I always hear that okay, GeoGuessr is no moving. You need to learn how stuff looks no move. But I played the game very differently. I feel like no move is just a part of my gameplay, and I do a lot of moving or pinpointing in general. So it's a very different way of playing the game, and you need completely different skill sets for that. So you need to know many different place names. You need to know how road numbering systems work. You need to know how to get info very quickly, because in the end it's kind of a speed run to get the 5K as fast as possible. And I just try to combine all of those aspects, the moving, the no moving, and the pinpointing in my gameplay, so that I am very diverse. So I'm not the best in moving, I'm not the best in no moving, I'm not the best in pinpointing, but I'm one of the fewer people that can do all. So I feel like that's kind of my strength, that I combine it all, and I'm decent at all, in some better, in some others, but yeah, that's my strength, I would say.
That's very valuable advice to others, actually, what you're sharing here. This is also a common pattern in any other field. And let me explain. It's going to be very rare for anybody to be the world number one in any specific field. It's very unlikely that, that anyone would become the world number one in chess. There's only going to be one in any case, or even become a very top player. But what you can certainly do is combine skills in different areas, or in this case, we're talking about GeoGuessr, but different areas, and you'll create a unique combination. Let's say you're very good at playing chess, maybe not the best one, or not the best ones, but then you may be very good at playing chess, and then doing kayaking, maybe professionally, and then maybe doing some IT programming, right? That unique combination, let's say, of chess, kayaking, and programming will probably define you very much and will make you a very strong asset if you're competing in something that combines all these areas. So I very much like your perspective of saying, maybe I'm not the very best in a specific area of GeoGuessr, but in aggregate, you're probably one of the very best by being very good at all these various skill sets. So that's also very interesting and refreshing, where you avoid having this obsession with one particular way of playing and rather enjoying different game sets, gameplays?
Yeah, similar to others, I started with moving games. I think, no moving games, sorry. I feel like only in France you start with moving games because that's a different community. But like the international community, everyone starts with no moving games. But I got very tired of it to only do that. I still enjoy it, but like only doing that is so boring in my eyes. Like you don't really, like, I mean, everyone do what they want, but I feel like it's so unrewarding to know the general area, but then to not get the 5K. Like to know, okay, you are on this road, but then to have no clue how to line up the road, how to 5K that. Like, as much as I love, like, for example, Harmless or something, but he always plonks beside the road, and I feel like it's so frustrating to see that. Like, he never clicks on the road. I mean, it's completely different play style, and he gets very close and everything, but I would just take the 5 more seconds and try to line up the road and try to find the exact place on the road and stuff like that. So yeah, it's just I changed from being only no move player to also learn how to pinpoint and how to do moving games, because it's just more diverse, and therefore you keep longer, you keep playing for longer because it's just refreshing. You just don't do the same all the time, and you always find new places. That's the cool thing about moving games. You always go somewhere and then you drive past something super funny or something. So you also explore the world, which is kind of like the purest way of playing GeoGuessr, you know, starting, just exploring the world, driving around. And that's kind of what I see in moving games as well, even though I try to do it in as fast as possible in speedrun, but you still notice your surroundings, and I really enjoy that aspect of the game. Yeah.
I always ask the same question. Do you have a specific system to remember things, or is it just practicing and having practiced a lot and it goes all into your brain?
I feel like I have a good memory for stuff that I'm interested in. So I don't really need to practice a lot when it comes to stuff I'm interested in. When I don't enjoy something, then I need to practice. But then I don't want to learn it generally. So I normally don't practice a lot to remember stuff. I don't have a special technique or something. For like example, for Indonesia, Kabupaten, I don't know if you know about that, but that's like the regencies in Indonesia, the subdivisions were like almost 500 of those. So to memorize those, you don't really just read and know where they are. I feel like you need a system, and I started to like learn systems for that. So I just made a story around how similar, like, a word sounds similar to this word, and then I made a story out of this word. So, for example, there's a Kabupaten called Tuban, and I just said, okay, that sounds similar to toucan, which is the bird. And I like, okay, this is the place where the toucans fly. Like, just to have a story behind it, and then I remember where it is. So stuff like that. And nowadays, because I know them by heart, I just don't need those stories anymore. But that was like a way how to learn it. I don't know if it's like really adaptable to other things, because I only used it for that. But I guess for Thai provinces, I also used a similar system. But yeah, just other things I just learn by doing. So you just play, and then you just keep remembering stuff. And the more often you see it, the more secure you are in it.
It reminds me of a technique, a memorization technique called the memory palace. Is it something you're familiar with? The memory palace.
Yeah, that's what I looked up, and that's how I tried to start with it. Yeah, that's the technique.
It's not exactly what you're talking about, because you're talking about imitation or syllables that sound the same, but you tell yourself a story, and this is the part that is similar with the memory palace. So for the viewers who don't know the memory palace, this is about associating a particular location, let's say your bedroom, and then you go to the bathroom and then the kitchen, and then you will associate a specific action or an object to that room so you can remember it as you go from one room to another. It's a bit more complex than that, but that's the gist of it. So that's what it reminds me of when you shared your technique here. It's funny because you're the only one who has some kind of a technique. I've asked the same question to everybody else. So I think maybe other players will pick up on your advice here, or at least your own experience in terms of what they can do to memorize things.
I can tell you why the others don't really have a technique for that, because like they learn more about those no-move stuff, and I feel like to remember how a road looks or something, you don't really... I don't know if there's a system for that, to remember a look of a place. So I think it's not that adaptable to like this play style. I mean, for the ones that play moving and need to remember place names, phone numbers or whatnot, that's more usable. Yeah.
You talked a few times about playing with friends and having fun with friends, also with learning in terms of, hey, there's someone who's good at Japan, I want to learn from them. And recently, I believe on your channel or on Rainbolt's channel, you were a lot with Rainbolt, who's one of the more visible faces of the community. Do you want to talk about that experience of real life meetups with GeoGuessr pro players and friends?
Yeah, so I feel like I'm the guy in the community that met the most people IRL in real life. So I started doing this, I think my first meetup with a person from GeoGuessr, I don't even remember. I think it might have been Jelotris or Ananana. Both people I met through GeoGuessr. And like the first time I met them was like, okay, this is so cool. You meet someone that you know online and then you just go to their place or do stuff with them and it just connects. And since then I met so many people like all over. I did like a Europe trip with a friend from GeoGuessr. I did a Norway trip and met 4 people there. Like in Paris, obviously. Here in where I live, I met many people. Rainbolt came and visited me here. Or like, I guess, not just for me, but also, I guess, a reason. And yeah, it's just incredible to connect with those people that have the same passionate interest in this game that you have, and to like experience the places where they are from, or if they come to me that I can show my place is also so cool, like just to share. So yeah, I can say I have met so many great friends through GeoGuessr. And yeah, maybe that as well, that I'm very passionate about traveling, so I can meet those people all over and then have like a local person that can tell me how living is in this place and stuff. So yeah, that's I really enjoy that about the game, and now it's not just about the game anymore. It's more about just having those friendships with those people, and yeah, I normally don't play at all on my own. Like I only really play on my own when I do Indonesia stuff, but the rest I'm just in voice call with friends, and we just enjoy the game together and play together and learn together.
For someone who's getting started and who has no friends on GeoGuessr or just no skills because they've just started, what would be your best advice for someone getting starting today? Not a year ago, but today, with all the resources that exist. Is there a recommendation you have, or a series of recommendations where someone could get started and not get demotivated when they see players like yourself who are so good? And, you know, the first reaction is, oh, they're cheating, until you realize, no, it's not cheating. People are really that good. Where should people get started today if they want to play GeoGuessr?
Yeah, first of all, it's a great time to start now. Like when I started and all the other pros now started 1.5, 2 years ago, like there were no resources available. But nowadays, all the research, or not all, but most of the research that is important was done, and you can just pick up from the stuff the others already learned and shared with others. So, like, in my eyes, the most important thing if you start playing is to don't get demotivated if you make bad guesses, and be like, okay, try no moving in the beginning, because I feel like people that do moving in the beginning, they only go for the stuff they know. So they drive to a domain, they go to a flag or something. But if you are playing no move, then you just need to look for every single clue that you have. And normally I would suggest that people should also use some kind of interaction with others. So don't just learn on your own. Also go into Twitch chats and ask, okay, why was this there? Why is this here? And maybe on Discord servers as well, where they share stuff. But don't just read documents as well. So there needs to be like a middle ground. So you need to read some documents, you need to learn from some people, but also practice a lot. That's like the thing. You need to practice. Like nothing is like just coming to you by reading hundreds of documents, and then you don't know where it is just because you read the document. You need to actively play, get the experiences, and combine both of those aspects. So yeah, and as I said, learn from others. Don't get demotivated, and especially don't compare yourself to others. That's very important because others have played this so much. Maybe they are more gifted when it comes to one thing, but you're more gifted when it comes to something else. And yeah, try to have fun while playing as well, because otherwise you just lose motivation.
That's very wise words. And Richard Feynman, a famous physicist, American physicist, had the following quote. He said, don't compare yourself to others, compare to yourself to who you were yesterday. And the point is, try to improve day by day in whatever field you're in. And I find this very valuable advice, and it's exactly the words that you shared also with us. Coming back to going and living and maybe experiencing different countries, are you inspired by what Rainbolt is doing and living in a different country every month? Do you want to do something similar? Maybe living in different Southeast Asian countries every year? Are you
So
tempted?
first of all, I kind of feel like I also inspired him to do that. So before that, he only lived in the US and only has been to the US. He hasn't been to another country. And like, because he's my close friend, I shared a lot about my traveling experiences, and I am very much into traveling. I try to be a very well-traveled person because I just love the world, as I mentioned before. And like, he saw the pictures, my travel stories, and then was just like, he asked me, how can I do this? And then I kind of gave him the final push. So he had the idea of moving somewhere else, but first it was like he thought in the US or something. Like, I don't take full credit for that, just to make sure, but I feel like I'm also a reason why he moved outside the US and took the step and try to experience more countries. So yeah, what did I want to say? Yeah, I'm losing my point. What did I want to say? With my brain. Wait. So
I was asking about you living in Southeast Asia, and I said,
yeah.
You're inspired by Rainbow. You told me
Yeah.
that you actually gave some inspiration to Rainbow to do that. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So, and now I'm also very inspired by him doing that. So, that he's like living in different countries, different cultures. I wouldn't do it for just 1 month because I feel like in 1 month you wouldn't really experience it. I think it's super cool what he does, but like, to actually get a feeling for how it is, this is just more like a long travel, which is also super cool. Don't get me wrong. But for example, I lived 1 year in New Zealand, and that's where I noticed how it is. So like, to live there is a different thing for 1 month or for 1 year. So I feel like you need at least 6 months or something to get going to actually live there. But yeah, this I really want to do. So I have like on my lifelong bucket list to live in China for a total of 3 years. I'm really interested in Chinese culture, so that's a thing. I started learning Chinese as well. But also in general, to live in Southeast Asia. I've been to Indonesia, Malaysia, and both countries really inspired me to stay there longer. I've been in Indonesia for almost 7 weeks, almost 2 months, but I was like, I could spend 2 years here, like, easily. So yeah, and also just, for example, Kuala Lumpur. I'm not really inspired, and I don't really like big cities, but this one big city really had everything. I just loved Kuala Lumpur. Like, for example, Singapore, I really disliked, but Kuala Lumpur was so beautiful. And yeah, so I could really imagine living in those countries in the future, in Southeast Asia specifically, but also in the rest of the world. I just want to stay longer in some places in the world. For example, New Zealand, it was perfect. I really would like to do this again. I could imagine doing this again in New Zealand, actually, to maybe permanently move there. It would be so cool. But I also love Germany, so there's like, I cannot be everywhere. That's the problem. But yeah, I love traveling. I want to travel and live everywhere and just to see the world. That's really my thing.
Where did you go in New Zealand? Where did you live?
So like, I did a very typical German thing. After school, go 1 year abroad. That's like the most German thing ever.
Yeah.
And I went work and traveling in New Zealand. And work and travel means you work in some places and then you travel the rest. So I didn't really permanently stay at single places, except when I was working. So I stayed like in Napier for 2 months because I was working there. I stayed in south of Nelson for almost 2 months because I was working there. But the rest was just like, I stay somewhere for 2-3 days and then go somewhere else. So I've seen the whole country almost, except
very nice.
Let's say the whole South Island, the North Island, not that much. But yeah, it's a beautiful country to travel and live in, actually.
Very nice. I know New Zealand, but I've only been there a month, not a full year, and I very much like it as well. So I relate to what you're saying, and also relate to what you're saying regarding Singapore versus KL. What makes you dislike Singapore? Which is ironic because, as you know, the default location on the world map, the default map on GeoGuessr, is often to go to Singapore, and the easiest one for most people to guess.
Yeah.
What makes you dislike Singapore as opposed to KL? Is it because it's a bit too new, too artificial, maybe?
So what I disliked about Singapore is how everything feels so artificial. Mm-hmm. Like, the whole, like, environment not environment like by the looks or something, but like the interactions between the people, they feel so artificial. They just don't feel real. People are just like like showing a face of them that they are not really like, they just want to fit into the society. It's so weird. Like, I was there only for 5 days, but I feel like this country is so fake. I cannot really describe exactly how I felt, but like, it just doesn't feel like everyone can be who they are. Like, they need to fit. And yeah, like, that's why I didn't like Singapore. It's just so fake. And also the environment of, like, the working environment, everyone is so hectic, everyone is so stressed. It just doesn't feel like anyone is having fun. They're just there to work, earn money, to survive. And I mean, as a tourist, it's very nice, but if you want to stay there longer, I don't think that's the place to be. While in KL, on the other hand, everyone was like happy, everyone was in the evening going out, eating, staying with friends, do some activities, and it just felt way more vibrant. Like, people are having fun in life, even though they may work as much, or like, it's hectic for them, but it just seemed like the people are more enjoying what they are doing. Yeah.
That's fair. Are there locations on the world that you'd like to visit? You mentioned China, where you'd like to be for 3 years, but are there other locations that you'd love to go? It's on your bucket list of areas where you'd love to go.
So much. I have at least 100 countries on my list where I really want to go, and the other 90 that are left are like, okay, I would go there as well. Top 3, definitely number 1, Myanmar, Burma. Definitely number 1. Sadly, not accessible at the moment. I think I need to wait 10, 15 years for it to calm down again. Second highest on the list, Laos, where I will go actually in February. So that's
nice.
Very nice. So I will go there actually with Trevor, so with Rainbow. Because, as I said, I love traveling. I inspired him to travel. He said, can we travel together? Which is our favorite country? Both of us are very high is Laos. So we go there together. Where I'm very excited about. So Myanmar, Laos, you see Southeast Asia. And then there are actually quite some countries like that are high on the list. I'm really fascinated by high mountains. So I like Eastern Afghanistan, Northern Pakistan, just like landscape-wise, or Kyrgyzstan. Yeah. Culture-wise, I'm not that interested in Central Asia, actually. But landscape-wise, it's really cool. Landscape-wise as well, South America, like Chile, Argentina, super cool. But I would say, if I would need to pick one, it would be maybe Ethiopia, because mountains and the culture is very different and very unique. Or maybe Namibia, because that's something I've never been to, like, to very dry country. It also has some German history, which I'm very interested in as well.
I like how you transformed my request for a top 3 and it became a top 30 in just a second. Very nice.
I could also I just excluded countries I've already been to, because then New Zealand and Indonesia would be very high on the list as well. But for the ones I haven't been to yet.
You know, the irony is that I've been to Indonesia many times, especially for work. And I thought I knew a lot about Indonesia culturally and even geographically, the landscape. And then I played GeoGuessr and I realized people who've never been there are actually much better, because then you realize and pay attention to details that I don't pay attention to, like bollards and street signs or even license plate, because it's not something I was by default interested in. And that's the other way around. Whenever I go somewhere, let's look at the license plate and the bollard. I'm reading GeoGuessr stuff wherever I go.
Yeah, like I have the same. Like, before I played GeoGuessr, I'd never noticed those things. But now that I play it, I'm just like, every time I go somewhere, I just look at those things. For example, now in in August actually, August to September, I did like a 6-week road trip with a friend from Italy, and we went from Germany down to North Macedonia and did everything on the way. So a Balkan trip, effectively. And every time we crossed the border, we were like, look, this back of the sign is black. Look, this is a triangle-shaped sign instead of a rectangular-shaped one. Or, like, look at this bollard, this road line, this different asphalt. It was so crazy and it was so weird, but I loved it. Like, we just stopped on the side of the road after each border crossing and took a selfie with a bollard. Like, it's the most GeoGuessr thing ever, but I loved every single second of it. Like, this is who I am now, effectively, so I really needed to do that.
I did exactly the same thing in Turkey just a month ago, when I saw the bollard of Turkey, and I just stopped with a car just to take a photo with it, something I would never ever do before. So I completely relate to this habit. And I remember actually because during the summer you were playing the Rainbolt tournament on the Saturday, and I believe you were on your phone. No, I think Rainbolt mentioned this a few times.
Multiple times actually. So I've
Yeah,
been traveling all of July, August, and September, and I played still like 6, 7 tournaments. Like one was kind of memey. I was like sitting in a national park in Kosovo somewhere and just played from my phone. That was actually so funny. But yeah, like I played 6, 7 tournaments. For me, the tournaments are only for fun, by the way. Like even though I'm a competitive person, I don't go in there and say, okay, I want to win that thing today, because I just know, like, when it comes to this format, people are better than I am, and it's all about learning big countries. There is no need to learn small countries, which I find super annoying, but this one thing that is in the spotlight of, like, GeoGuessr competitive is this tournament, and it only reflects a small part of what actually GeoGuessr is in my eyes, but everyone thinks it's the main thing. So everyone is just sweating hard to learn the 7 biggest countries. Just know them, get close in those big countries, the rest you don't need to know. And that's so stupid in my eyes, but everyone can do what they want. But I'm just annoyed that this is the one thing everyone thinks, okay, this is how you play GeoGuessr. It's fine, it's one aspect of it, but that people actually think this is the one thing, that annoys me a bit, because I feel like if you watch, for example, Blinky play, who's my best friend and I'm a massive fanboy as well, like him pinpointing and knowing places so quickly is so much more impressive to me than, okay, you can region guess Russia. Because even though this brings more points, he can, even though it's North Macedonia, he can pinpoint this within 20 seconds or 30 seconds. And that's more impressive to me, but doesn't reflect in the gameplay of the tournaments. So I'm a bit sad about that, but what can you do?
You talk about tournaments, so let's talk about your experience briefly at the World Championship that took place at the end of October in Paris. You ended up winning with your 3 team members, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, 2 team members. Yeah, we
2
were
team
3
members.
people. Yeah, Blinky and Macam. Yeah, love those guys. We are great friends, and so we signed up for that thing because it was organized by the French community. We are very active, all of us 3, in the French community, because in my eyes, this is the nicest part of the GeoGuessr community. Many people don't really like it because they play moving games and pinpointing, but they are so creative. They are whole different aspects of the game, and I really like the French community. And we just call them French community because they're mostly French, but they are very inclusive as well. They don't just speak French. They also allow people to speak English and have no problem with that. And that's a very wholesome place to be. And yeah, so because of that, we were very close contact to them. So that's why we signed up very early. And then we knew, okay, there will probably be almost only French teams and very few international teams, because many people were skeptical in the beginning. It was the first LAN. Many international people had never contact with them. They didn't want to go to Paris just for that. So they were just watching, and probably next year they will sign up. But this year was just like, okay, let's see how it's going. But then everyone saw it was a great event and a lot of fun. The biggest and coolest thing I've ever done in GeoGuessr, by the way. Like, this whole event was so cool. And so, what did I want to say? Yeah, the whole experience was super cool, and just the competition wasn't as internationally competitive as I wished it to be. So there were mostly French people, as I said, and therefore, even though like we were world champions and everything, you didn't have the world's best players in there additionally, so to compete with. I just want to mention that because some people are saying, oh, it was only against French people. They were very good. They know a lot about moving and pinpointing. Maybe they may not be the best in moving, no moving, but that's, on the other hand, all the no-move players, they don't know shit about moving. So I like that the competition was so like, you needed to show every single skill set in GeoGuessr. So it wasn't just made for moving players, it wasn't just made for no moving players, it was all of it. And you needed to know all of it, and that's, I think, why we went very far and won the whole thing, because we know all a bit, you know? And we practiced very hard before that as well, for like the 3-4 weeks before the tournament. We practiced each day for 2-3 hours. We tried to learn every single country within the team, so we split the world in thirds, and everyone learned something about something, so that we like are universally known. That we have knowledge about the whole world. That's what I want to say. So yeah, we prepared very hard for it, and in the end it turned out great. So the whole event was just incredible, and I really, really, really liked it. Yeah.
You mentioned you'd love to see more international players and the best players join this kind of event. Is there anything else you'd like to see different to make it even better?
Maybe more events that are not just organized by this part of the community, because I feel like it's all the cool stuff that is unique and like well organized is coming from the French community, like when it comes to big events. And the international community is kind of like, I once said it in the New York Times interview, like separated and stuff. So it should be more of a hub that comes from GeoGuessr itself. So I think GeoGuessr devs should make something where everyone connects with each other and can compare themselves or play with others, so that there's like an actual competition organized by the GeoGuessr devs, and that this actually becomes an esport. I feel like there is potential for it. That not like the external French community needs to organize that, even though it's super cool. But I wish this would come from the devs itself. And speaking of the devs, sorry that I construct the question a bit, or like
no, absolutely, go ahead.
The devs itself could do so much more, but I think they are right now on the correct path. So, like about 8 months ago, or like 6 months ago, they didn't care a bit about the pro scene. I need to say that clear. Like they really didn't care at all. They only make their money with like the noobs, and that's fine. Or not the noobs, with the beginners, with the stuff that where people like pay for pro, they play 2 games and then they never play again. That's how they make money. So it's fine. But you need to remember that the pros bring in views and bring people to the game, and that's not a direct thing that you can see on paper. Like you don't see where's this person, why did this person sign up, because they watched a Rainbow video, or because they just found the game somewhere. Like you just see, okay, they started playing now, it's a new player, but where is it coming from? And now I think they notice, okay, this medial attention from Rainbow, for example, is really bringing new players to the game. So now they start caring about the pro scene as well. And actually we, in Paris, we spoke to the devs. Like I had so many points that I dislike about the game. Actually, like GeoGuessr has so much potential. I think there's so much going wrong still. But they are on the way to make things better. So we wrote like a list with like 40 very important points, and then I like gathered them with all the pros, and then I just sent it to them. And I said it would be very nice if you implement those things into the game. And since then, already like 10 things changed and were implemented into the game, which is very nice to see. And I hope they address the very, very big problems, like such as world map, for example, in the future, because I know they are doing it, they are working on that, but hopefully it comes sooner than later. So I'm very hyped about the future, because I think the devs are picking up on it, and I really need to give them some shout outs to that, because before they didn't care at all, and now they do care, and it's nice and refreshing to see. And as said, we see it. It's not like, okay, we don't notice, but we actually notice it. Yeah.
What are the top 3 things you'd still like to see? You mentioned the world map to, I guess, not be used or to be improved.
Yeah, so the world map is, as said, horrible. Improve it, replace it, whatever. Then as I said, the tournaments. I feel like you could do so much with tournaments in GeoGuessr, like to bring.
But real in-person tournaments? Sorry to interrupt.
Both.
In-person tournaments or online? Okay, both.
In-person, online, both. Like there's so much potential for that. And like some other things. For example, the map maker. So the map maker is horrible. They try to fix some things, but it's just worse than the map making app that my friend Rihanna made. She did such an incredible job, and I feel like she should just get paid from GeoGuessr, implement it to the game, finish. Like no need to try to find some ways to improve your map maker a bit when you have the perfect map maker app that Anna made. And for example, those 3 things are massive things that are actually super annoying about GeoGuessr, but there are so many minor things like that. I couldn't come up with them right now because there's so many. But yeah, there are also some other big things, but those are 3 that I came up with now.
You've mentioned how the French community tries to be inclusive, even if you're not French. When we talked about the championship, is there anything the community can do to be even more inclusive of more players? Or I'm thinking about more women, because I see a lot of men playing, but I feel we're far from gender parity in the game. But that's just one pet peeves of mine. But I'm just wondering, do you have any ideas of how to make the game or the community even more inclusive?
I feel like the GeoGuessr community is incredibly inclusive already. So with the example of the French community, many international people actually shit on the French community and say, okay, they're not inclusive, but that's just, they don't know anything about the community and didn't really had any contact to them and just say that without really knowing. kind of annoying, by the way. Like the whole community is already very inclusive in my eyes because most of the players are adults or not young teens at least. So I would say the average age is around 20, 21, so grown-up people that know how to communicate and to be a nice person. While in other gaming communities, you don't really have that. You like the audience is like 13 years old, and then it's obviously toxic. And to the point, to the fact that there are not that many women, I feel like that's just a thing. Generally in gaming, you have less women than men. And then the fact geography is like a thing where I feel like more men are interested than women. I obviously don't have the numbers right now, but I feel like those two things together alone are a reason for why it is like that. And I don't think it's a bad thing. You don't need to force gender parity just to have gender parity. Like, if there's a subject where more people are where more men are interested in, then you have more male players. So it just makes sense in the end. But I already feel like against what you said, I feel like there are already kind of a lot of women in the community. Like I would say at least a fourth or a third of my friends are women in GeoGuessr, and maybe it's just me because I have contact with those, and I don't know if maybe others don't, but like many
let me rephrase this. I think the most visible people are men, right? When I've watched a lot of videos, obviously, and it's not about just twitching or streaming on YouTube. It's also just the faces of the community. So I'm going to take up what you just said and ask you if there's anybody among your friends who would like to be interviewed. I'd love to showcase them, because I think having people who can inspire others, you need to show that, hey, you have girls and women playing as well, for instance. So to your point, I'm not obsessed with parody, but I do think the faces are very much male dominated. At least that's my little observation. I may be wrong, but at least the visible faces.
I feel like you're right with the visible faces, because those are mostly the content creators or the high level pros, and those are in fact male. Yes, I feel like there are very few women that are content creators, but I feel like there are some. But from the very good players that may not be the world's best in something, there are many women. For example, Rihanna, Emily, Janine, Nadia. Like, I don't want to miss out anyone, but people that are close friends to me that are female and like play the game very well still, and like are a central part of the community. There are some, not too few in my eyes, or not too few. Like, it could be more, obviously, but I feel like that's not a big problem, you know.
Feel free to recommend anyone to me. You know, I'd love to, if they're interested, I'd love to showcase them.
I will.
Right?
I will. So the thing is, I'm very active in like my friends group, which we call Soil Court. I don't know if you ever heard about that. Like, there's some Discord communities that gave themselves different names. My friends group is mostly active in Soil Court, so around Harvard's community. I don't know if you know Harvard, but he's like one of the OGs of GeoGuessr. He played the game in 2015-16 already on ESA and whatnot. And around his Discord, there are so many friends that are close to me, where I can recommend you every single person from where you could make a super interesting interview with, and that are very interesting personalities. So I feel like you should definitely interview like Anna, because she's coming from a like different background, because she's doing like programming as well, which is super interesting. Blinky as the world's best player in my eyes, Harvard himself, Mumrick as two super old OGs. I don't again want to miss out on anyone. Like, there are so many cool people around my friends group in this Discord. Meckham as well, obviously, as my teammate with the World Cup. Jacob, Scry, Steve, everyone, Ziggy. So there are so many cool people that you could interview. I can give you a list of at least 20 that are super nice and super well to speak to, or super nice to speak to, because also having different stories to tell. And even though I feel like kids are also part of the community, they are already like more grown up and like have a different perspective of life and the game. So there are some that are over 30 or around their 30s, which is old for the gaming community, which is super interesting to have in an interview as well. Yeah.
I'm not going to give you my age, otherwise I'm going to cry. You talked about Twitch a little bit. We talked about YouTube, and I noticed you post and you Twitch a little bit. Do you want to talk about your experience and what you're trying to achieve by sharing? I think you mentioned implicitly, or actually quite explicitly a few moments ago, by saying you'd like to give back and also share your tips. with others. Do you want to talk about your online experience and twitching and streaming?
Yeah, so I'm by no means a content creator. I could easily become one if I would have interest in that. I feel like I would need to like to do video editing and stuff like that, but I'm really not interested into that. So maybe it's coming at some point. Maybe I just like hire an editor and then I could produce actual content on YouTube and Twitch. But for me now, it's just like a hobby where I can just do stuff I would do anyways and then just upload it or stream it somewhere. So I'm just playing what I would play anyways and then just stream from time to time. But most of the time I'm playing, I don't even stream because I feel like it's not that interesting to watch. But it seems like to some people it's actually interesting to watch, judging by how many people actually tune in, which I never would expect because it's so weird to me. But I mean, yeah, I enjoy it and I don't have a problem to just like stream and be on camera and whatnot. But I don't think I found my passion in video creation and streaming yet. Maybe it's still coming. But as you mentioned, I like to give back to people. So I try to, if anyone has a question, I try to help. I made like a Discord with another friend for the German GeoGuessr community because I'm like, we have so many talented people in the German-speaking part of the community, but there's no hub to communicate with, and we have so many people that know about the game, but that have nowhere to start. So I was like, okay, we found a community and start explaining stuff, and it's actually pretty well. So I already collaborated with like 2 of the biggest German streamers at like all over Germany that play GeoGuessr from time to time, and I just like try to explain it to them, and through those some people found interest in GeoGuessr as well, and that's really warming my heart because that's my passion, and that I can show my passion to others, and that people are coming to the game because of me or how I explain it, or like just to get people into the game. That's so cool, and especially German speaking people, because obviously I'm German and that makes me proud if Germany gets more represented in GeoGuessr outside the studio as well.
That's fair. Let me, we've talked a lot of times. I'm really thankful for your time. So just to wrap up the interview, I have a couple more questions for you, which are not necessarily related to GeoGuessr. It's again a way for people to get to know you a bit better. Is there something that you believe in that other people find not true or insane or a bit crazy to believe in? You don't have to have something, but just if there is something that you believe in very strongly and that other people think is insane.
The thing is, I'm very what is it called? I don't know the English word actually. I'm
Auf Deutsch.
rational, I guess.
Yeah, rational. Yeah, logical.
Yeah, I'm very rational. Like, yeah, exactly. I think very logical. So most of the things that don't make any sense, I don't believe in. So I always see like the stuff that just is logical, I think is true. Yeah, I don't believe in any like mystical, magical stuff or like the weirdest conspiracy theories or whatnot. Yeah, I just think as long as something is humanly possible, then it can be realistic, and then it could exist or whatnot. But for example, like I believe everything in GeoGuessr is possible, and many other people think we are all cheating. So that's maybe a thing. So because I read this so often when I like go into some Twitch channel and then just call something, and then they're like, "Yeah, you must be cheating, you must be googling or something." It's like, yeah, I know it works differently, and then I just put myself into a position of something where I have myself no clue about, and then I'm just like, okay, if someone would have a clue about, would this be possible? And I'm like, yeah, I can relate to that from like my experiences. So yeah, seems reasonable.
I understand what you're saying, and I'm just gonna mention you correspond very well to the German stereotype, which is not trying to be offending here, but when you mentioned earlier how you got annoyed, I think it was Harmless you were mentioning, who's always pointing next to the road but not on the road, and now you're talking about logic. It corresponds very much to the German stereotype, right, of being very structured, very precise.
I feel like I'm stereotypical German. I'm so German when it comes to my character traits and stuff, and I'm very proud of it. Many people dislike it internationally, but I'm very proud of being German and being myself. So yeah.
You say you're very rational, but just before the recording of this video, you decided to unblur your background because you mentioned you have posters or paintings behind you. So I took this as a message that you sent me implicitly to ask you about those images that you have behind you. What are those? Do you want to describe them?
So this one is from Indonesia. This is just like a great memory from it's from Yogyakarta. It's a batik pattern. It just reminds me of my travel experiences, and it's very nice to like look at. Like I wake up, it's my bed, and just wake up and look at this. Just like brings back great memories. So like I like to just have something to relive an old moment with. So that's something I actually really like. So like kind of to nostalgia, but like also just having pictures of your travels, for example, I really, really like. And then those like 3 pictures here is just like I don't really watch any TV shows, I don't watch any movies, but this one I really like have some nostalgic feelings with, because as a child I was like watching so much cartoons after I came back from school, and this is like 3 characters out of Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is the one show I'm so passionate about. Like really, I don't care about any shows, maybe like 2 or 3 in total, but I don't watch any TV, but this show I just rewatch every year, and it's just like a part of me. And like I decided to put 3 of my favorite characters over my bed, because it's just like, yeah, this is a part of me, and I'm really passionate about it. So yeah, this is Azula, this is Iroh, and this is Katara, 2 of the coolest characters in the show.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. There's a lot we could talk about because you have a lot to share, but I also want to respect your time. I think we've been talking almost an hour with this interview. So I'm going to ask you one last question, which is, do you have any final words, at least as part of this interview? And we can always do another one later on, maybe in 6 months or a year or whenever you feel like. Any final few words you'd like to share with anyone who's watching this, whether they are a new player in GeoGuessr or they don't know about GeoGuessr, or whether it's other pro players or maybe the dev community, the developers of GeoGuessr, the game, the company behind the game?
Yeah. So first of all, yeah, I feel like I could make easily podcasts. I can talk all the time. So I feel like there's so many things that I could say. So first of all, developers, stay how you are, like keep going with what you're doing right now, like it seems good. To new players, like it's so cool that new players start playing the game where I'm so passionate about, and that they are really interested in learning. That's the coolest thing ever to me. Yeah, to all my friends, I'm so happy that I met all of you through GeoGuessr. Like that's so cool that I met so many great people through GeoGuessr. Like my friends group before that, it was so limited. It was just like 2-3 people where I did stuff with daily, and it was like, even though I love them, like it's still like my real life friends, of course, but just to have like those other perspectives of life and everything, it's so cool. Like especially like big shout out to Blinky, my bestest friend. Just meeting those people really gave me a different perspective of life. And yeah, in general, like I'm so happy that GeoGuessr is such an important part of my life. I'm so passionate about it, and it brings so much joy to my life, and it opens up so many different possibilities that I would have never expected to happen. Like, for example, I just got interviewed by the New York Times, which was crazy to me. I make a TV, I'm in a TV, what's it called, from like my local area here, I'm in the TV. That's also so crazy to me. And like to get like interviewed by some people on the internet like you, or like for example a person I met through GeoGuessr interviewed me to write her exam about me at uni because she's studying journalism. It's so crazy all to me, but I really enjoy it, and yeah, I hope there's more to come. Maybe I become a content creator or something at some point. I don't know. I have the potential for it. I know that everyone is always telling me I should always create content, but I just don't really enjoy it yet. Maybe it's coming. Who knows? But yeah, I just enjoy sharing with people.
You know, for a long time, I've created a podcast with a good friend of mine and a colleague of mine, Dirk, who's based in Frankfurt. We used to do a podcast for 5 years around debating, because obviously you won't be surprised that he and I also love logic. So what we used to do is we call this To Debate. You saw the archives are on the internet, and we would randomly pick a side. So we'd pick a motion to debate on, and with a flip of the coin, he or I would take the for or against side. The reason I mentioned this, because you mentioned podcasting, if you're interested, you don't have to answer now, but I'd be curious, I'd be interested to do this with you. We could do a podcast around GeoGuessr. It's fairly easy to set up because we don't have to worry about the video editing. and maybe that could be something interesting. Could do this in? Do you speak French as well?
Un petit peu, but not really. I just understand a bit. I had it at school,
Okay.
so I have a basic understanding, but I could by no means hold a conversation. Like,
Okay, we'll do it in English, French, German, and Chinese then. I don't speak Chinese, but
I
it's
speak a bit of
multilingual.
Italian as well, so we could put this in as well.
Anyway, I'm just planting this seed in your head. If there's anything you'd like to do, I'd be curious. I'd be interested to find maybe an original way of maybe commenting about the community or interviewing people on the podcast or something.
I think that
just throwing it out
brilliant.
there. Could be...
I think that would be brilliant to just like get to know those people behind like the people that you know from GeoGuessr. I feel like so many people I would learn more about where I have not that close contact to, and just that would be so interesting. For example, you yourself. I feel like your story is so interesting. I would love to learn more about your character, for example. It's already like I don't know you much, but like I feel like you just seem so like interesting and likable that I would love to hear more about you. So like a podcast would be very, very, very cool.
You let me know, right? No obligation, no hard feelings. But if this is something that stays with you in your head and you think, oh, you'd love to do this with me, and I don't get offended if you want to do this with someone else, by the way. But if you are interested, then let's put it up together. I'll wait for you, right? Because I don't want to force you.
I mean, I say yes already now because I've loved this idea. We do so we have like a bi-weekly tournament where we play in the French league, and after each we as teams of 3 or 4, and after each game day we just gather together in one Discord, and we speak with like 10-12 people and just make like a podcast post La Ligue, so we call the La Ligue. And we just talk about the rounds, and then we just continue talking, and then we are just like in whole different subjects, and then we just talk for 1 or 2 hours. And I really like that concept, and if this would be like an actual podcast about GeoGuessr, or just geo-related, or not even geo-related, just the people from GeoGuessr, and then share stuff about their life, I think that's super interesting.
And it also travels, because you are very well traveled, probably one of the most traveled of all the pro players I've been able to speak with. GC has traveled quite a bit as well, but most others have not had the chance. Go ahead.
I feel like for my age I'm very well traveled. Like this year, like 2022, I traveled 25 countries, which is kind of a lot, I feel like. But I don't like measuring in countries, because I feel like spending one day in Luxembourg or 1 year in New Zealand, same count, is so stupid to me. But to just give it a perspective. But I for my age, like I'm 22, I feel like I've seen quite a few places in the last 4 years, and I want to continue doing that. So when I'm at the age of GC or something, I want to have the same experiences as them. Or Wolf Tracker, for example. Wolf Tracker is traveling so much as well, which I find super fascinating and inspiring. Definitely a goal for me.
You mentioned Myanmar, and I got lucky to go there just before the junta took over, and I definitely recommend the country. Very, very nice people, very beautiful. So
that's
definitely recommend it.
So high on my list. Like, I really wish I could go, but I need to wait at least a decade, I guess.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Kodiak, thank you so much for your time. We're going to wrap up this interview. We have a lot to talk. Maybe a podcast idea that we can work on after this interview. We'll see. But thank you very much.
It was a pleasure. It was so much fun. I really liked talking to you. So it was great.